Let's talk about that moment when you hit the wall, when motivation evaporates and self-doubt takes the wheel. Have you ever sat there, staring at your to-do list, feeling like every item is just a mountain you can't climb? For me, it wasn't dramatic. No movie-worthy breakdown, it was quieter. The slow erosion of excitement replaced by a constant whisper of, why bother? Psychologists call it learned helplessness when repeated setbacks convince you that effort is pointless. Imagine running on a treadmill that never stops, but you're not even sure why you're running. Now you might be thinking, Daniel, everyone gets tired. What's the big deal? True, but there's a difference between fatigue and futility. One pushes you to rest, the other convinces you to quit. That's the danger zone. Let me tell you a story. I once spent 3 hours editing a single episode only to delete it at midnight. Perfectionism, that's the cognitive trap where your standards become so high that no effort feels good enough. Sound familiar? Rock bottom, I've learned, isn't about failure. It's about losing sight of why you started. And that's where the real work begins, because clarity, not comfort, is what gets you out. Now let's dig into self-doubt. Is it always the enemy, or can it actually sharpen us? Self-doubt is like cortisol in the brain. Too much and it's toxic, but a little keeps you alert. Cognitive behavioral therapists even say self-questioning can prevent rash decisions. But when it mutates into imposter syndrome, that nagging belief you're a fraud, it can freeze you in your tracks. Now you might say, isn't confidence the real solution? Here's the twist. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's moving forward anyway. I've learned to treat self-doubt like a smoke alarm. Sometimes it's just steam from the shower, not an actual fire. Let me paint a picture. The first time I hit publish on TacticTalks, my hands were literally shaking. But that anxiety was proof I cared. The key? Use doubt as a diagnostic tool, not a dictator. Ask yourself, is this fear signaling a real problem or just a discomfort of growth? So how do you move when you're stuck? Let's talk about micro goals and rituals, 2 productivity hacks that sound simple but change everything. A micro goal is a bite-sized task, like recording just the intro of a podcast. Neuroscientists say completing even tiny tasks releases dopamine, the brain's natural reward chemical. It's like tricking your mind into momentum. Now, you might be thinking, how can something so small matter? Here's the deal. Small wins stack up. They build what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief you can succeed. That's rocket fuel for motivation. My ritual? I light a candle before hitting record. It's a signal to my brain. Showtime. Rituals create neural anchors, mental cues that make starting easier. If you're feeling paralyzed, try this. Write the tiniest step possible, then do it. Celebrate that win, no matter how small. That's how you turn inertia into ignition. Let's get real. Grit is great, but isolation kills progress. Why do you think support groups exist? Because connection is a force multiplier. Research on social accountability shows that sharing your goals boosts follow-through by up to 65%. That's not just motivational fluff, it's behavioral economics at work. We're wired for reciprocity and belonging. Now, you might wonder, what if I'm more of a lone wolf? I get it. I used to think vulnerability was a weakness. But letting people in, even just one trusted friend, creates what psychologists call a commitment contract. You're not just quitting on yourself, you're letting someone else down. Let me tell you, the first time I admitted to a friend I wanted to quit, they didn't judge me. They asked, what's one thing you can do this week? That question snapped me out of my spiral. So if you're struggling solo, try reaching out, find your tribe. Even digital communities can make the difference between giving up and going on. Here's a plot twist. Sometimes, the most strategic move isn't to push harder, it's to pause. Rest isn't quitting, it's recharging. Let's talk about burnout. That's when your body's stress response, the sympathetic nervous system, gets stuck on high alert. Recovery techniques like mindfulness and sleep help reset your baseline. Now, you might be skeptical, but won't I lose momentum? Think of elite athletes. They build rest days into their training for a reason. That's called periodization, alternating periods of stress and recovery for maximum growth. When I took a week off from TacticTalks, I came back with more ideas than ever. Sometimes stepping back is what lets creativity catch up. So build rest into your routine. Don't see it as giving up, see it as investing in your next breakthrough. Let's wrap this up by flipping the narrative. What if setbacks are actually your best teachers? Resilience researchers talk about post-traumatic growth. the idea that adversity can spark new strengths. Think of it like muscle hypertrophy. You only get stronger by repairing after micro tears. Now, you might ask, isn't failure just failure? Not if you refract it through what psychologists call a growth mindset. That's believing your abilities aren't fixed, they're built through effort and adaptation. Let me tell you a story. The episode I almost didn't publish, it became the one listeners messaged me about most. That taught me vulnerability connects more than perfection ever could. So here's your mission. Next time you hit a wall, ask not just what went wrong, but what can I build from this? Setbacks aren't dead ends, they're detours to innovation.